Hello ladies and gentlemen, Tevaron here, and welcome back to the Amonkhet set review. Today we will be evaluating the red cards of Amonkhet. Just as a reminder, these are my opinions and raw card evaluations, having never actually played with the cards before. If you would like to check out the previous reviews, just check the link in the description or the small pop-up in the upper right corner of the video. And now, on to the cards. On Crop Crasher. For 2 and a red, we have a 3/2 Minotaur warrior with haste. You may exert on Crop Crasher. When you do, target creature can't block this turn. Well, here we see a bit more of the Minotaur tribe, and while I like this one more than Cursed Minotaur, I'm still not super excited about it. If Minotaurs turn out to be a good synergistic tribe together and pretty competitive and playable, then On Crop Crasher probably gets the nod. Otherwise, not so much. Battlefield Scavenger is 1 and a red for a 2/2 Jackal Rogue. You may exert Battlefield Scavenger as it attacks. Whenever you exert a creature, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Well, the only way I can see wanting to run this is if you're benefiting from a lot of Madness cards, or one of the cycling payoff cards, since they also trigger from simple discard. Outside of that, I think there are much better 2-drops to be had. Blazing Volley. 1 red for a sorcery. Blazing Volley deals 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. Well, this is a sideboard card without cycling. And the only way this is playable in Duels is if every deck you face is filled with nothing but X1s. So it's not playable, that is. Bloodlust Insider. 1 red for a 1/1 human warrior. Tap, target creature gains haste until end of turn. This guy isn't even something I'd want to play in Limited. A 1/1 for 1 with a very mediocre ability is not appealing to me in the slightest. Well, we're off to a pretty rocky start here. Hopefully things will pick up soon. Blood Rage Brawler. 1 and a red for a 4/3 Minotaur warrior. When Blood Rage Brawler enters the battlefield, discard a card. Now, here is a Minotaur to get a bit excited about. And we see a bit more of the Hellbent synergy that red, and to a lesser extent, black has going on in Amonkhet. I expect red aggro decks to be sporting some beefier creatures very soon. And for those of you that are unaware, by the term Hellbent, I mean having no cards in hand. Hellbent is a keyword from original Ravnica block. Cartouche of Zeal. 1 red for a creature enchantment. Enchant creature you control. When Cartouche of Zeal enters the battlefield, target creature can't block this turn. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has haste. In my opinion, the flat-out worst of the Cartouche cycle. The only way I could see ever wanting to run this is if I'm desperate to reuse a trial as much as possible. Desert Ceradon. 5 and a red for a 6/4 beast with cycling of 1 red. Well, this is a fine card, nothing super exciting, but it's okay to run if you want to be cycling things. The cost to do so is as cheap as it gets, and should you need a fairly beefy creature late game, then you have that as well. Not a game winner by any means, but perfectly fine if you need some more cyclers. Electrify. 3 and a red for an instant that deals 4 damage to target creature. Well, it is instant speed, so that's a plus. I'm just not sure any red deck is in the market for this card. 4 mana is quite expensive, and aggressive decks generally want their burn to be able to hit their opponent's face. If you're playing other colors besides red, then you probably have better removal options in those. Well, not green perhaps, but still, this is far down on the list of removal spells that I want to be playing. Emberhorn Minotaur is 3 and a red for a 4/3 Minotaur warrior. You may exert Emberhorn Minotaur. When you do, it gets +1/+1 and gains menace until end of turn. This is only playable if you're on the Minotaur tribal plan, I think. which may need to run this and some other more mediocre Minotaurs to fill out their curve. Outside of that, I think there are much better cards to be running in the 4-drop slot. Flame Blade Adept. 1 red for a 1/2 Jackal Warrior with Menace. Whenever you cycle or discard a card, Flame Blade Adept gets +1/+0 until end of turn. I'm not completely sure about this guy. There may be an aggressive cycling deck that's capable of abusing this guy's ability. He certainly can push a lot of damage through very quickly. I'm not sure if there's enough support to actually pull that off though. Still, he does combo fairly well with the next card, which is Fling. 1 and a red for an instant. As an additional cost to cast Fling, sacrifice a creature. Fling deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to target creature or player. Another blast from the past here that could be making a lot of people very salty soon. Just let through that damage because it doesn't kill you, then oops, I have Fling. Good game. It is important to remember that if this gets countered, then you've lost your creature for no effect, so plan accordingly. Glorybringer is 3 and 2 red for a 4/4 dragon with flying and haste. You may exert Glorybringer. When you do, it deals 4 damage to target non-dragon creature an opponent controls. How? Really, how is this not a mythic? Or even legendary? 5 mana to hastily smack your opponent in the face for 4, and kill one of their creatures. And the effect even happens during attacks, so it can remove blockers. Where do I sign up, and what organ am I required to donate to get this? This guy, or girl as the case may be, is incredibly strong. The non-dragon creature is kind of a non-issue right now. The only dragon that's really going to be seeing play that you would have to worry about are opposing Glorybringers, and they're almost certainly going to be tapped. Harsh Mentor. 1 and a red for a 2/2 human cleric. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land on the battlefield, if it isn't a mana ability, Harsh Mentor deals 2 damage to that player. You want your opponents to be miserable, you say? Have I got the card for you? Of course, it will really depend on how many activated abilities they have, but 2 damage for sacking and evolving wilds, or every time they crew a vehicle, or any other non-mana ability. Not as good in duels as it would be in a paper format, such as Modern, certainly, but wow, this guy is captain of the fun police. I certainly like him much better on my side than the opponent's. Hazaret the Fervent, 3 and a red for a 5/4 legendary god. Indestructible haste. Hazaret the Fervent can't attack or block unless you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. For 2 and a red, discard a card. Hazaret deals 2 damage to each opponent. One of the easiest gods to enable, especially with all the support this set is giving us for shrinking our hand size, and Hazaret will give any even semi-aggressive deck a ton of reach. It's probably a good thing it's a mythic. Hazaret's Favor. 2 and a red for an enchantment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may have target creature you control get +2/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. If you do, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Okay. Have you heard of the card Blood Mist? Well, that card isn't really playable in my opinion, and this card is even worse than that one. Heart Piercer Manticore. 2 and 2 red for a 4/3 Manticore. When Heart Piercer Manticore enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, Heart Piercer Manticore deals damage equal to that creature's power to target creature or player. Embalm of 5 and a red. I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but this card might be pretty good, especially since it can fling the sacrificed creature at the opponent's face. There are several creatures in the format that I wouldn't mind sacking for this effect. Scrapheap Scrounger and in this very set, Dread Wanderer both spring to mind. Giving an aggro deck just that bit more reach and committing a good-sized body to the board is a pretty good proposition. Plus it's a May ability, so you don't have to do it. The one downside I see right off the bat though is in some decks this is competing for the 4-drop slot with Grim Strider. In decks that aren't running black though, there isn't much that looks a ton better than the Manticore. Insult to Injury. The insult half of the card is 2 and a red for a sorcery. Damage can't be prevented this turn. If a source you control would deal damage this turn, it deals double that damage instead. The injury half is 2 and a red for a sorcery. Injury deals 2 damage to target creature and 2 damage to target player. Well, this seems like a powerful effect for a red deck to have, doesn't it? If you can manage to cast both halves in the same turn, it's even more powerful since it then deals 4 damage to both targets. However, generally if a red deck is at 6 mana, it's probably losing the game. Though maybe not with the reach this provides. Still, this card will let aggro decks laugh in the face of fog effects. I'm not going to say whether that's a good or a bad thing though, it's just a thing. Psst, it's a good thing. Magma Spray. 1 red for an instant, Magma Spray deals 2 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Well, this card deals nicely with our buddies Scrap Heap Scrounger and Dread Wanderer, though unless those cards are a huge percentage of the meta, then exactly how good this is going to depend on how good Embalm is. It's certainly a good tool to have, though I don't think I'd play it over other options unless Recursion is running rampant. Manticore of the Gauntlet. 4 and a red for a 5/4 Manticore. When Manticore of the Gauntlet enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature you control. Manticore of the Gauntlet deals 3 damage to target opponent. Well, a less good Manticore in this instance. Red doesn't have a ton of synergy for -1/-1 counters, and 5 mana is a lot for an aggressive red deck to muster. Why just aggressive, you ask? Well, it only deals damage to opponents. It can't kill creatures. Would be much better then. Still, it is reach, and there may be a deck desperate enough for reach to play this. I guess. Probably not, though. Minotaur Sure Shot. 2 and a red for a 2/3 Minotaur Archer. Reach. And 1 and a red, Minotaur Sure Shot gains +1/+0 until end of turn. I mean, it's got some abilities that do things, right? Honestly though, if you're not on Minotaur Tribal, this probably isn't making the cut. Neff Crop Entangler. 1 and a red for a 2/1 human warrior with trample. You may exert Neff Crop Entangler as it attacks. When you do, it gets +1/+2 until end of turn. I mean, maybe? Trample is pseudo-evasion, I guess. There are almost certainly better 2-drops to choose from though, right? Maybe if you're on the always watching all exert creature deck, though I'm not convinced that's actually going to be a thing, especially since you can only run 2 always watching. You never know though. Pathmaker Initiate is 1 and a red for a 2/1 human wizard. Tap, target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. This card is meant for limited. Don't play it in Constructed. That is all. Pursue Glory. 3 and a red for an instant. Attacking creatures get +2/+0 until end of turn. Cycling of 2. Well, I've been high on cycling throughout all of the Amonkhet set review. Not with this card though. The actual spell itself isn't something I'm ever going to be excited to cast. On the surface, pumping the team for 2 power for a turn might seem like something that an aggressive red deck wants to do, but I suggest that playing another creature, killing an opponent's creature, or burning the opponent's face are all things that it would want to do much more. Play something that does one of those things instead of this. Thresher Lizard. 2 and a red for a 3/2 lizard. Thresher Lizard gets +1/+2 as long as you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. While this has more synergy with the Hellbent strategy, I can't help but think that the 3-drop slot is already going to be full in that shell. Maybe not though. If there is room, perhaps the lizard could get the nod. After all, 3 mana for a 4/4 isn't terrible. Trial of Zeal. 2 and a red, enchantment. When Trial of Zeal enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. When a cartouche enters the battlefield under your control, return Trial of Zeal to its owner's hand. Well, this is certainly one of the better trials. Reusable burn is something I'd gladly play. I'm just not sure the cartouches are good enough cards to actually warrant playing them, and if so, then this actually isn't reusable. That said, we are getting close to perhaps having a critical mass of burn spells that can hit your opponent in the face. True Heart Twins. 4 and a red for a 4/4 Jackal Warrior. You may exert True Heart Twins. Whenever you exert a creature, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Go home, True Heart Twins, you drunk. Seriously though, too much mana for what this is doing. Even if the all exert deck is a thing, I think that 5 mana is just asking way too much for what you're getting here. Warfire Javelineer. 3 and a red for a 2/3 Minotaur Warrior. When Warfire Javelineer enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to target creature an opponent controls, where X is the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. Again, I don't want to jump the gun, but I suspect that in a spell-heavy deck, this could be one of the best removal spells in your arsenal. The fact that it also puts a body on the board is extremely good as well. It certainly feels like Dynavolt Tower and other spell-heavy strategies have gotten an overall boost in this set. It's also a Minotaur, if that wasn't immediately apparent. Well, that will do it for the red cards. I can't help but feel that red seems a little bit weaker overall than the other colors we've seen so far. Still, there are some winners to be found here. In particular, I'm looking forward to putting in some testing with Glorybringer. A dragon worth playing at last. And it's not even a mythic. Harsh Mentor. Teach me your ways, Sensei. I will learn from your cruelty. Hazaret the Fervent. All these cards seem to have the theme of kill the opponent, huh? Warfire Javelineer. This may actually turn out to be not good enough, but the nostalgia of Flametongue Kavu is calling to me from aeons past, and I have to give it a shot. And that brings us to the end of this video. What do you think? Are there any red cards you're aching to cast? What about glaring omissions? I'm a little bummed that we once again didn't get Tormenting Voice, and I would have loved to see Sweltering Sun in Duels as well. Tomorrow we will be evaluating the green cards coming to Duels in Amonkhet. Won't you join me again, friends? I have been Tevaron, and until then, be excellent to each other.